Number 5, please. There we go. Perfect. This is the bit where I distract you by just talking absolute nonsense because they're bringing chairs out. I'm brutally honest, I have to tell you. But let's get one more big round of applause for Tom for that keynote. That was fantastic, wasn't it? So, awesome. So as we touched on in the intro, we now have our Monzo 3.0 panel talk with Harry, Jack, Jamie, Jarno, and Ed. Now, what you might not know about Monzo 3.0 is you've probably all seen the app refresh, but this was one of the most uniquely collaborative Monzo efforts that we had ever done in the company to this point. You know, it wasn't just the designers and the engineers actually building it, but it was uniquely shaped by our brand team and marketing and all this stuff to really deliver a solid new brand proposition that is the future of Monzo. So let's get into it. Let's get a round of applause for the Monzo 3.0 team.
Hello. Thanks so much for joining us on your Saturdays. We have one more person that's not on that slide, sadly. But I think we introduce you in a bit. But that's great. That's fantastic. Thank you so much for being here. We're going to talk about something called Monzo 3.0. I'm Jack, by the way. I'm a product marketer at Monzo. And I'll probably explain what that means in a bit. This is going to be a bit of a casual conversation about how we went about the latest point version of the Monzo app. So for those of you who are technically inclined, obviously 3.0 will mean to you it's a big update, a point version of the Monzo app experience. What does that mean? Well, in, I guess, technical terms, it means that we have a significant change to our app, and it means that we want to make a big deal about it. But it's more than just the app. It's actually the whole experience. And so we noted that there was a huge range of things that were happening at Monzo, and we had a really great opportunity to tell a wider story around all of the products we were releasing, rather than just talking about individual products. So really, it was a really good time for us to bring together a bunch of products that we were launching at the same time and bring it all under one roof, under a really nice story. So joining me on the stage, I'm super, super excited to have Harry, Jamie, Jarno, and Ed. You can see their job titles there, and Jamie, you're a product manager as well. So I wanted to start by talking about Monzo 3.0. Obviously, as I just mentioned there, we saw this as an opportunity to tell a story around all the things that Monzo were working on over the last 6 to 9 months or so. And who better to tell us about stories than a writer, Harry? So, Harry, what was the story behind how we came together, and what message were we trying to talk about with Monzo 3.0?
Yeah, so it just kind of felt like with the 3.0 app experience coming out, we were at this kind of seismic shift kind of point. It was going to look very different. It was going to feel very different. And at the same time, there was this drive, as Tom was just talking about, to do things that were going to help people get their main account usage out of Monzo, put their salary into Monzo, pay all their bills out of Monzo, do a bunch of stuff that just shifted people's perceptions of what it was like to use us. And in kind of standard Monzo fashion, internally, we were all working on these things a little bit separately and just kind of pushing ahead on things we thought were really good and were going to help people out. And we kept having these same conversations going, wouldn't it be nice if we did this and this at the same time? Because they're all kind of part of doing the same deal. And what that deal was just going, we are now at a point where we are not a spending card anymore. We're not designed to be a spending card anymore. But people do still think of us that way, actually. And that's kind of because we hadn't done any concerted things to make people feel or think differently. That's how most people use us. That's how most people talk about us to their friends. That's not how we thought about ourselves, but we weren't telling that story. So we thought this is the opportunity to go, okay, now Monzo 3.0, this is a shift. It's an opportunity for us to talk about a big shift. And we're doing things like the salary sorter that means that as soon as your money comes into your Monzo account, we automatically make it really easy for you to have that smart segmentation of money that Tom was just talking about, and bills pots that let you make your bills payments come out of pots and not be part of your main account, so you're never going to overspend accidentally on your rent, on pizza money by accident. And that was just a really nice opportunity for us to say, okay, the story here is that we have kind of grown up, we're moving into this big new house, which is a 3.0 app. There's loads of space to do all these cool things that are going to make us kind of the bank of the future and the home for all of your money. And by the way, here are some of those things. The salary sorter, the bills pots, all together, so that this is the place for all of your money, sorted, easy. You don't have to worry about it anymore because this is where it all fits.
So you mentioned a couple of things there, and it sounds like there are definitely two strands to this. The first is the get paid early salary sorter and bills pots work, and that was done by Jono and Ed, your teams. Tell us a little bit about how those projects got kicked off and started.
Shall I kick off? Yeah, they're, I think, three features that we look at and say, these we think make Monzo better than pretty much any other account to organize your money. And yeah, we were thinking about them from the perspective of somebody that just wants to understand their finances more and feel more in control. So we spoke to lots of users. We did a lot of research on what kind of issues people had with their current banks, with how they use Monzo at the moment, and yeah, found this mechanism of kind of taking control of your money the day before you normally would be able to. So you've got it kind of there in your brain and able to kind of manage it how you'd like. People worry about, am I going to have enough money to pay the really important bills in my life this month? So being able to put that to one side and not accidentally spend it on pizza, as Harry said, is actually like quite a valuable bit of mental real estate you don't have to keep thinking about that money on. And salary sorter, again, this is another one that at the time that you want to be thinking about money, you can think about it. And then you can kind of put it out of your head while you know it's safe and separate it out.
Great. And tell us a bit about bills pots as well. So this is something that's been really widely requested by loads and loads of people. How come we decided to do it at this time, and what were the kind of, I guess, the technical challenges behind building these things as well?
Yeah. As you said, bills pots has been asked for a number of times. Every time we run a poll on the community threads, on the community forums, it's always the number one thing that's asked for. And I think it felt like now, as we're trying to reposition the Monzo app and trying to show users that we're not just a spending card, that it's a place where you can feel really in control of the whole breadth of your finance. This was the time that we could put the time and the effort into like building this feature. But yeah.
We kind of approached making Monzo the best account for your primary account for your salary by asking users, what is it that's the problem, what means you wouldn't do that already, and what would make it better if you did. And I guess on both sides of that, people like the ability to have Monzo as a spending card. That's why you got it 2.5 years ago or whenever it was. And so being able to separate out money that you need and money that you want to spend was a really valuable one. So that's the core of why BillsPot feels important to people, I think.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like there's like quite a nice, I guess, journey with your money with this as well. So you get your money a day early, and then it gets sorted automatically for you by the salary sorter. And then when it's time to pay bills, those bills get paid automatically for you, so you don't need to worry about them. Is this a deliberate thing that we decided to do? Or did we just accidentally kind of thread these together?
Yeah, that was, I think, a little bit of both. Understanding that they work so well together in this journey around them, I think, was something that wasn't initially thought of, but we thought they all tackled the similar problem. So when we realized that actually they might fit together really nicely, we kind of decided to build this narrative around it, and that's what the kind of marketing and the writing side of it really pulled through.
Now, interestingly, this wasn't a big brand advertising campaign, but rather it was, I guess, the start of changing the narrative from, hey, this is a great place to spend, but also a great place to save and a great place to pay your bills. How did we actually try and achieve that, Harry? Where did this effort go to in the end?
In terms of how we were thinking about it, or how we actually put it out into the world?
Yeah, how we put it out into the world.
Right.
Where did it go?
Yeah, so we initially just tried to get down like this narrative straight in our head. We knew that we were doing all these things, as Jono said, but we weren't quite thinking about them collectively. And once we realized they were all essentially trying to solve the same problem of going, look, it just makes sense if all your money is in Monzo. Your spending money is already here. You can keep that separate from all the other things. What's the story that makes that make sense? So the first thing we did was kind of write down a narrative of saying, we've grown up now, Monzo 3.0, this is the future, all the things we've just spoken about. And then we decided, okay, how do we want to get that out to people? We did a little bit of social advertising, we did a little bit of blog writing, we kind of tried to weave together the actual experience of using these features in the apps, that they were complementary as well, so that they didn't feel disconnected anymore. But like Jack says, we didn't go out with a great big campaign for this, because These are also the first iterations of these features, and I know that Jamie, for example, is going to talk a bit about where the new navigation is going to go and what other things are going to be happening with the salary sorter and bill spots. But we didn't want to go straight out with a great big campaign. We wanted to see how people are going to use these things and also be very aware that this is the first iteration of it and what's going to make it better, how we're going to improve on these things, and not kind of go too big with a thing that we were fairly confident was going to work. We knew people were asking for it, but we also wanted to be humble enough to say, here it is, do you like it, what works, and how can we improve it in the future?
And that's the way we approach product design, right? Excellent. So these features that we built, and as we start to add more and more features to Monzo, we started to find at least that the way that the app looked currently did not serve that purpose. And so a very long time ago now, we set out with a mission to change the app and build it for the future. And Jamie, you're on the team that built that. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about the philosophy as to why we started to do this?
So yeah, it's been mentioned that we were definitely running out of space. As also the company has grown, there were two problems. One, when a team was building a new feature, it was becoming harder and harder to work out where it should even go. And then once it existed, people weren't even finding the features, which made it doubly tricky. So we wanted to make sure, one, there was space for things to go, but also if Monzo is going to truly become this kind of storefront for the future, connecting to like things that we don't even do right now, like mortgages, like credit cards, etc. There needs to be one, space for those things to go, but also a way for them to be organized that makes sense for you. So the main kind of philosophy was like investing in flexibility. Up until this point, each edition was kind of like patched in to the structure of the prepaid spending card, with like what's most important not always being in the right place. So it was a challenge because we were both aiming to kind of redesign the app to better organize what we had right now, but also to kind of predict what might come in the future and make sure that our systems were designed to be able to extend to that as well, which was the kind of the main philosophy under what we were doing. And then that did provide room for the things that we wanted to build as part of, I guess, the 3.0 thing, so get paid early salary sorter and bills pots as well. So obviously this has been going for a couple of months now. We are past the 3.0 update and a few far along. How's it looking so far? Has it been successful? How's feedback been?
I think there's a couple of sides to that. I think in a way, yes, it has been successful. We've seen that a lot of users are using and really enjoying our features. I think in our most recent sort of salary income, in the October salary, we had about £80 million worth of salary paid in, and about half of that was paid early, something like that. So there's loads of users using the features, and it's similar with salary sorter and bill spots. There's lots of users using them. But there are loads of users who aren't using them, so there's that side of things. And also, I think it's maybe a little early to really know whether or not it's been successful. I think we've got some early indication from our new user data, the way our new users are using the app. I think our September and October users are behaving slightly differently and are treating the app a bit more like their full app. But yeah, it's early signs.
I think that's a really good point. When you talk about something that you've already got a preconceived notion about, if you've been using Monzo for 4 years and came and picked up a card at the old office and you see Monzo as this prepaid card that's a little bit scrappy, you have a very different idea of what it's going to be. So when you go out with a new marketing campaign, you say Monzo is the bank for all of your money. If you've never heard of Monzo, it's a bit easier to convince you, I guess. Moving this like existing user base, people have more trust on Monzo, so in theory it should be a little bit easier, but I think that's where we still got to keep working. With people who've never heard of us, I think we can tell a story in a way that we'd like to tell, whereas there's a bit more convincing to do with, I guess, people who know Monzo quite well. Maybe you're in that group here.
I think when it comes to the new structure, I mean, as Harry said, this isn't like the version. It's like 3.0, we're done, see you later. It is a big change, and it's one where we did roll it out slowly, and we're kind of very mindful to make sure that like we had this idea of like do not harm. So we wanted to make sure that as we rolled out, like those that were using the new structure versus the old, there weren't any like major changes with like how they were using the app. If they were struggling to kind of come back and perform key actions, we got to the point where those were kind of both equally healthy and we had the confidence to roll out, but that doesn't mean that there aren't still some things that we need to improve. So now a lot of what we're doing is taking on the feedback from people that are a few weeks into using the new navigation, the shock of change is over, and now what we're trying to work through is finding which core bits now need to be improved and made a little bit more flexible still as we add more features. So there's still work to do. It's like we've kind of smoothed out the kind of transition, but it doesn't mean there's not some kind of like improvements to do as we go.
And I think from a marketing point of view as well, I think it really helped us frame how we want to talk about Monzo when we're on Facebook, Twitter, our website, our blog, and even when we're talking to press publications, for example. And we did a lot of work into kind of understanding how we talked about ourselves, and we were actually quite shocked in that most of our Facebook advertising featured a card, and it talked about how great the card was. Well, actually, we want to talk about how great the bank is, and now felt like a really great time to talk about how great the bank was, because you can get paid a day early, because when you get paid, that money automatically goes to exactly where you want it. And when your bill needs to be paid, it gets paid with no hassle, and it's just tidied away nicely into a bills pot. So it definitely felt like it affected us from that point of view. Would you have anything extra to say on that, Harry?
Yeah, I guess from a brand or a marketing point of view, we haven't spent actually a lot of time on brand and marketing historically. Most of our growth, still 75-80% of it is word of mouth, and we would always want that to be consistent, because the way we've always thought about those things is that what your identity is as a brand is a product of just what people think about you and how they talk about you. And if you build really good things, people will go and say to their friend, oh my God, have you seen this really good thing? And as much money as we might want to put into a TV campaign like we did earlier this year, that's to attract new people. But what keeps them and what makes them excited, what makes them tell their friends, is things like, oh my God, if I get paid a day early. Or if I get paid, all my salary just gets sorted. So it was a nice kind of test bed for this idea that what we were going to do and what we will always keep doing is the focus is on building a really, really great product that people really like and solving problems that people actually have. And then the thing that will enhance that and get it out into the world is lots of nice brand work and campaigns and advertising. But that is always going to be a vehicle for the stuff that we're building, and the stuff that we're building is absolutely paramount, and we need to iterate on it and always make sure that we're checking back and seeing if it's doing the job we think it's supposed to be doing, and asking people, could it be better, how could it be better? That's what makes a brand, and that's what makes people excited about us, rather than the other way around.
Great, thanks. So, Jamie, I understand that you have a few things to share us that the world hasn't seen yet about how we're going to take this to the next level. You have your clicker.
Yeah, this is
I hope this works.
Yeah, I can, let's see if one click proceeds. It does, great. So there are lots of bits of feedback we got, obviously, as we rolled out the new navigation. And a big part, as we said before, was like investing in flexibility and people being able to set up their kind of Monzo app in the way that made sense for them. And as build pots became existent, also the #1 request disappeared from the list, and #2 rose up the ranks. So I'm going to show some kind of work in progress designs of some of the things that our team is working on to kind of take the 3.0 new nav to the kind of next step of solving people's needs. So some of the main themes we heard of feedback around the new navigation, especially if you're using Monzo for lots of stuff, is if you have pots both for kind of short-term budgeting and long-term savings, they're not kind of all equal, and you don't need to use them like at the same level of frequency. Right now, the oldest pot you made is the first one you see. The most recent one is the last. So if you've just created your builds pot, it's like very, very far away, but maybe you want to see it every day. If you're saving long term, you might not want to be tempted to dip into it every day, and you want to kind of save yourself from yourself, and out of sight, out of mind often helps. And finally, like one main change with the new navigation was presenting your personal account and joint account, if you have both, kind of in one space where you can kind of move between the two a little bit more easily. That, for people that use their joint account as their main account, though, meant that it was always kind of second in the list. So what we kind of saw is this theme around being able to order your different pots and accounts in a way that made most sense for kind of your day-to-day usage. I'm going to show you like 3 different things that we're working on at the moment. One is hiding pots. So the idea here is, as I said, sometimes you don't want to be reminded of your long-term savings because you want to hit your goal. You don't want to kind of keep dipping into it when you need some pizza. So the idea here is when you're looking at your list of accounts and pots, there's a kind of small edit button which would then take you to a kind of hiding, rearranging flow. This is also a hint to the next point. And by tapping on one of those items or swiping, you can say, I want to hide this, don't remind me of it. And it will then kind of be kind of at the bottom of the list, kind of like hidden, grayed out. And then when you hit save, it's then kind of a small reminder telling you that there's something hidden. And when you're in the kind of card view, it wouldn't appear. So you're swiping across to other pots, and then it wouldn't appear in the list. We did some usability testing a couple of weeks ago, finding some people on the street near the Barbican, and there were some bits to be improved, but mostly people were very excited and it made sense. So we're now kind of starting to build a first version, and the thing that we're keen to find out is whether or not this is the right amount of hidden, the right amount of friction, because you don't want it to be so painful that you don't end up using the thing at all, but you want to make sure that it's not so easy to unhide things that it doesn't serve its purpose. So that's one thing. Very related is the idea of ordering your pots so that the pot that you use every day sits right next to your kind of current account spending card, and maybe, again, the long-term things are a little bit further away. It's, unsurprisingly, it looks like how reordering things tend to look on mobile. So using native patterns, which is something that we try and do as much as possible, you enter the same edit flow, and you can kind of drag the pots up and down to put them in the order that makes most sense for you. Finally, this is related, but it's kind of like a small, like, in the meantime thing that we've added to the apps already. So for people that do use their joint account as their main account and want to see it first in the list, and kind of when they open the app, that's the default, we've added a small toggle in Monzo Labs. So if you enter your settings, you can say, show my joint account first, and it will bump your joint account and all its pots to the top of the list. Long term, there will be the flow to do it would be integrated with the kind of pot reordering, pot hiding, but we figured, given that that's quite complicated to build, and making a quick toggle that shows one thing before another was quite quick, we added it into Monzo Labs, so that's something that you can then try out now if you have a joint account, if you open your apps. I think that's it from me.
Great. Thank you so much for that, and thank you to everyone on the panel, Harry, Jamie, Jano, and Ed. And thank you, and we'll see you soon. Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you, Monzo 3.0 team. It's me again. Chairs come in, chairs go out. It's the circle of life, or something like that.